All right, let's just jump right in. Look, if you're sick and tired of the same old career advice, you know the stuff I'm talking about, right? It's either go drown in student debt or pretend you're some coding genius on the internet. If that's you, then you are in the exact right place. Because today, we're going to break down a totally different way to think about making some extra money.
So here's the thing that's going to sound kind of crazy. The core idea? It's that starting a side hustle is, and this is a direct quote, easy actually. Yeah, I know, that probably flies in the face of everything you've ever been told. We all think you need some huge, super complicated business plan, right? But it turns out, that's just not the case. I mean, let's be real for a second. The options we usually get are, well, they're terrible. On one hand, you've got the traditional path, which is what? 12 plus years of school, college, maybe grad school, and a mountain of debt. Awesome. Then there's the internet path, where you're supposed to buy a hoodie, open up some code you probably can't even read, and what? Just hope for the best? Both are super intimidating, and let's be honest, they usually lead to a big fat zero.
All right, so let's just cut through all that noise. The big lie we've all been sold is that starting something on the side has to be this impossibly complex, soul-crushing thing. It really doesn't. I promise you, there is a much, much simpler way to go about this.
So you can forget about trying to navigate the dystopian simulation of LinkedIn or writing up a 50-page business plan nobody's ever going to read. The most important thing, the whole key, is this. It all comes down to understanding one single, powerful concept. And that concept? It's leverage. And that brings us to the first big idea here, the leverage pyramid. You can think of this as your new blueprint. It's the framework for how you finally stop trading your time for pennies and you start working smarter, not harder. We're talking about fundamentally changing the entire game of how you earn money.
So what is leverage? Put simply, it's just getting more output for your input. I love this analogy. Think about a seesaw. Most of us are pushing on the short end, working our butts off just to lift the other side a tiny bit. We're trading hours for pennies. The whole goal here is to find the right end of that seesaw to push on, so with the same little push, you send your income flying into the stratosphere. Okay, so there are basically three types of leverage you can use. The first one is labor. Pretty straightforward, right? Getting other people to do the work. The second one is capital. That's investing your money so it multiplies all on its own. But the real game changer, the absolute top of the line S tier of leverage right now, it's code and media. Why? Because it's literally like having an army of robots and a huge audience working for you around the clock 24/7, pretty much for free. Okay, that's all well and good. You get leverage. But I bet some of you are thinking, great, but what do I have to leverage? I'm not special. Well, if that's you, then you need to listen closely to this next part. It's all about how you can find your unique value, or what the original material calls your spike. Seriously, let's just be honest for a second. Does this question hit a little close to home? That feeling of having no real skills? It is so common. You look around and you just think, I'm not an expert in, well, anything. What could I possibly offer anyone? Good news, that is a totally solvable problem. And here's the secret sauce. It's called finding your spike. Look, you do not need a PhD for this. All you have to do is pick one kind of obscure niche thing. The example here is cleaning lore, which I love, and you just dive deep for 1 month. Your only goal is to learn more about that one little thing than 99% of other people out there. And boom, just like that, you're not just some random guy or gal anymore. You are now the expert who can solve a very, very specific problem. You're the person people call when they need to know how to deal with a, quote, crusty driveway. And that kind of specialized expertise, that's what people will happily pay you for. All right, so let's fast forward. Your spike is working, you're out there solving problems, and you're actually making some money. Now what? What do you do with that profit? Well, this brings us to a beautiful little thing we're going to call the tax cheat code. Okay, so just picture this, right? You've had an awesome month. Let's say your crusty driveway cleaning business made a cool $5,000 in profit. Nice. But you know who else is excited? Uncle Sam. He's already rubbing his hands together, ready for his cut. But then, oh, what's this? Whoops, your finger accidentally slips while you're online and you just happen to buy a brand new $5,000 state-of-the-art pressure washer for your business. Well, look at that. That $5,000 isn't profit anymore. It's a business expense. And what's the result? Well, your taxable profit is now a big, beautiful zero. You pay little to no tax on that money. Plus, you just upgraded your whole operation with some seriously cool new equipment.
That's what we call reinvesting in yourself, and it's a huge win.
And look, please don't overcomplicate this part. The advice is super simple. Unless you're secretly running like 8 hedge funds on the side, you probably don't need to shell out a ton of money for an accountant just yet. Just use a simple website like FreeTaxUSA, and for the really easy questions, just let some random helpful person on Reddit explain it to you.
So let's recap. We've talked about leverage, we've talked about finding your spike, and we've talked about how to reinvest your money. But honestly, none of that matters without this final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle. The single biggest barrier holding you back isn't the economy, it's not our lack of good ideas, it's you.
And I really want this to sink in. Thinking about how you're going to start is not starting. That's called analysis paralysis, and it is the real enemy here. All that scheming, all that planning, all that worrying, it feels productive, right? But it's just a really clever way to procrastinate. It is not the same thing as actually doing the work. And hey, if you find yourself really truly stuck, here's some, let's call it beautifully blunt motivation from the source. It goes like this. If you find yourself failing, wait until 30 minutes before your rent is due. You'll suddenly turn into prime Shakespeare or a business mogul. Because nothing, and I mean nothing, focuses the mind like a real hard deadline. When the stakes are high, you'll suddenly discover a level of focus and drive you never even knew you had.
And all of that brings us to the final thought. And it's kind of a weird question, but it absolutely gets the point across. So, what's in your fridge? Seriously, if you open it up and all you see is like a sad-looking box of popsicles, well, maybe it's time to get out there and go solve someone's problem for them. So the real question is, what's your spike going to be?